And good afternoon and welcome back for another episode, number 69, I might add, of Thursdays with Charlie. It's the 16th of September, 2021. We're well in or passing the halfway point of the month of September. I want to remind you that our official dedication ceremony for the Garces Center will be at 2 p.m. on Sunday, October the 10th this year. That's coming up in just a little bit less than a month. 2 p.m. on Sunday, October the 10th. The tickets for that event are $5 each, and they're available after any of the masses on the weekends. They're also available during the week at the church office. So please, we encourage you to get your tickets and be ready. As you might remember, if you've been around the parish for a while, that's Columbus Day weekend, and our church building, our wonderful church building on the hill, was dedicated on the 11th of October back in 2003. So this is just 18 years after the church dedication. The same weekend, we're going to be dedicating our new Garces Center building. We welcome you. We'd like to have a nice turnout of our parishioners and our friends. The event will last about an hour in the afternoon. Besides myself being there, obviously, both Deacon Richard and Deacon Dan will be there to help join in our celebration. We have Bishop George Leo Thomas, the Bishop of the Diocese of Las Vegas, who's going to come down to officiate at the dedication, and Bishop Gregory Gordon, who was newly ordained as a bishop just this past summer, is going to be down with him. So we'll have two bishops. Bishop Gordon, by the way, is very interested in Father Garces, and actually he and his brother, through the Thomas More Society, were very instrumental in having the sign put up on Needles Highway some years ago, commemorating Father Garces' historic visit to what is now Laughlin. Father John McShane, who's also very interested in Father Garces and who was the first priest assigned to Laughlin here in 1992, Father John McShane will be with us to share in the event. We look forward very much. It's always fun when Father John is down here with us. Governor Steve Sisolak, the governor of the state of Nevada, will be joining us. It's an honor to have him come and join us. It's an honor for the state of Nevada to be honoring Father Garces for what he did at the very beginnings in our area. We also are going to have Daniel Markham. Daniel Markham is a man from the Midwest who's writing a book called 52 Masses. He is going to visit one church in each of the 50 states, plus Puerto Rico and the District of Columbia, over the space of a year, and he's going to write about them. A number of years ago, when he was planning this project, we were selected, St. John the Baptist, as being the church to represent the entire state of Nevada. So I'm thrilled about that. He was scheduled to be with us in February of 2020, but because of the virus and the closures and the travel limitations, he didn't come. So he's actually begun almost a year and a half late on his expedition to the churches, and he will be with us on the weekend of October 10th. So he'll get to stay with us for all of our masses at the casino and at the church, and he'll also be present with us for the dedication ceremony, the author of 52 Masses, so we're going to be a chapter in that book. And I'm very glad to have him with us. Many of you have been making use of our Colorado River Holy Water. If you haven't seen it, please take a look when you come to church or church at the Riverside or at the church building. It has 7 pieces of turquoise in it representing life and peace and health, as it did to the tribes that Father Garces visited. Last weekend, we announced a program. As you know, we set up that beautiful mural, 12 feet wide by almost 9 feet high, in the Father Garces room over at the Garces Center, of the Colorado River and the surrounding area. We want to finish it off by building a stone base in front of it, and we're calling it the Living Stones. As it said in the letter to Peter, we are all living stones in the building of the church. Well, we'd like to remember Father Garces and his excursions to our area by building a stone base to that mural. And so we were able to pick up 92 stones. We were founded in 1992, and we're having people inscribe them for $20 each. There's a form that you can pick up at the church or at the Riverside when we're there, and you can fill it out up to 30 characters, and we will write it on the bottom of a stone for you. Or if you want to fill it out and then come and write it yourself, you can write more than 30 characters if you feel you can fit them on the bottom of the stone. And just to give you an idea, the stones are quite large. They're 12 inches wide, they're 4 inches thick, and they're 8 inches the other direction horizontally. So there's plenty of room on the back to be writing things. And those will be available up until we finish the 92 that we have available. Everybody who comes for our dedication ceremony, please bring your tickets with you. It'll be a commemorative souvenir, but we also have a commemorative souvenir box that we'll give you on the day of the dedication to remind you of Father Garces and to remind you that you were here celebrating with us. It will contain a number of items associated with Father Garces and his visit to our area. I have a little interesting thing to say about today. I got thinking about names this week. You remember in the scriptures, there's a beautiful passage in the Old Testament, I have called you by name, God says. And our names are important. Our names are significant for us. In the whole ceremony of baptism, even though our parents have picked out our names before they have us baptized, but in the ceremony of baptism, there's an actual naming rite. The priest or the deacon asks the parents, what name or names do you give to your child? And the parents reply with the name or names they give. Traditionally, those are saints' names. Those are names that have a history in the church. Sometimes they have a history in the family, so sons are named after their fathers or grandfathers, daughters are named after their mothers or grandmothers or aunts or things like that. But there's a significance. Names are chosen by the parents to be given to their children, and there's a significance behind them. When I was researching Father Francisco Garces, he was born on the 12th of April in 1738, and he was baptized the next day, the 13th of April. And he has an unusual middle name. It's Francisco Tomas, so Francis Thomas, it would be in English. And then he's named Hermenegildo Garces. Francisco Tomas Hermenegildo Garces. And I couldn't figure out where the Hermenegildo came from. Did a little research and found out that the 13th of April is the feast of a Spanish saint, Hermenegildo. And apparently the pastor in the parish where Father Garces was baptized had a custom of naming the child on the saint's day in which the child was baptized. So every child baptized on the 13th of April had Hermenegildo somewhere in his name. I'm not sure if there was a feminine version of that if the child was a girl. But that's how we got Francisco Tomas Hermenegildo Garces. He was baptized on the feast of Saint Hermenegildo in Spain. In confirmation, the person being confirmed can choose a name to be confirmed with. It used to be thought that this would be an additional patron saint for the person being confirmed. Now more and more we find in religious education programs that people are being asked to remember their baptismal name and to retake it on their own, since in most cases the child was given the name by the parents, so confirmation at an older age, presumably around high school age, is a chance for the child to accept the name and say, I want to follow the example of that saint in my lives, or those saints in some cases. So their confirmation is another opportunity to choose a name. Sometimes in your history, you know that when a person is chosen as pope, the pope chooses a name different than his original name, and that becomes the name by which he's known for the rest of his life, because he's taking on an important new responsibility. It's symbolic that he would take on a new name. It happens in religious life that when a person becomes a brother in a religious order or a nun in a religious order, they take a new name, signifying their new life there. Again, sometimes they might repeat their baptismal name, but the older custom was to take something new. I might have told you this story, but back when I was in high school, I dated a girl named Mary Downey. And Mary went on to the convent after high school to become a sister of St. Joseph of Peace was the particular order. And when she entered, she was known as Sister Mary. But their custom was, after you finish your period of discernment, of novitiate time with the order, that you would be given a name by the Mother Superior. And so it was interesting. We were waiting, and Mary was going through the novitiate. I actually had the opportunity once to surprise her. She was not allowed to have visitors during that period, but I was able to call the Mother Superior and explain that her parents, whom I knew, were very interested and concerned about her. And I didn't actually say I was a priest, because I wasn't. I was a seminarian studying for the priesthood, but Mother somehow got the idea that I was, and so she gave me permission to surprise Mary and visit one day. And I can only tell you this, Mary was really surprised. Here we were, young college-age students. Sister Mary was there in the library, and I arrived, and I just happened to borrow a Roman collar from a friend of mine, and I've always looked a little older than I am, especially at a young age, and so I arrived over there, and the Mother Superior said, "Oh, Sister Mary will be so surprised when she sees you, Father." And I said, "Oh yes, she will be really surprised." And they brought Mary into the room, and there I was sitting in my Roman collar, and Mary comes over to me, and she goes to hug me, and I could hear her in my ear, "What are you doing here? You're going to get me thrown out." It was a surprise visit all around. But at any rate, back to the story, the custom was that when you finished your novitiate, the Mother Superior would give you the name by which you would be known for the rest of your life. Problem was that at that time, this is back in the 1960s, the Sisters of St. Joseph of Peace had so many nuns that all of the, quote, good names had been taken. So what they were doing was, if a nun died, that name became available again, and they would give it to a young novice, so she would carry on the tradition of that name. Now, when Mary was finishing up her novitiate, there was an elderly nun, and Mary was scared silly that this nun would die before her novitiate was over, and that Mary would be given that name. And I said, well, how bad could that be? So what's this nun's name? The nun's name was Gunagunda. And Mary said, I don't want to be known for the rest of my life as Sister Gunagunda. Fortunately, the nun did stay alive, and Mary did not get that name. But names are significant, and nicknames are too. I was reminded of that earlier this week on Monday. The patron saint, the saint of the day for Monday, was St. John Chrysostom. And it was noted in his biography that he was known as golden-mouthed. And I wondered why he would be known as, he was a preacher, I knew that, a great writer in the early church, but why would you know him as golden-mouthed? It certainly wasn't because his sermons were brief. They were not. They were very, very long, and many of them are preserved. But he seemed to have a knack of connecting with the people by using very realistic examples that people could follow, and his words were put together in a very beautiful fashion. People liked to listen to John Chrysostom preach. And so the nickname, the Golden Mouthed One, what he said was beautiful, it flowed, it had good resonance with the people. Then I got to thinking of, nicknames are interesting. I remember a comedian, his first name is Mark, and I can't remember his last name, but he's on Dry Bar Comedy online. And he does as part of his routine, he said, when I was in high school, he said, my nickname was Gorgeous. He said, people would say, oh, here comes Gorgeous Mark. And I said, well, of course, I know that. I have a mirror. I know. He said, and there was another kid in my class who was very, very large, and his nickname was Tiny. And he said, it's amazing, he said, how they used the opposite for him, but they used, oh, come to think of it, maybe Gorgeous was not meant in the way I was taking it. Perhaps. Nicknames are kind of funny, and they are applied to all of us. Sometimes they're a derivation of our given name. I remember my own name, I was baptized as Charles, but I very rarely in my life have used Charles. There are some derivations of Charles that had come up over the years. One is Chaz, but I was never a Chaz. I didn't look like a Chaz. That's kind of a Hollywood type, I think. It's not something that I was. And certainly I wasn't a Chuck. Chuck was the kid who played football and had the crew cut and was all athletic and all. I was not that. So I kind of got Charlie by default. He was the friendly kid, the one who was around and people could enjoy and laugh with and have fun with. And so that's how Charlie came to be my nickname. In the Gospels, we have a number of people who are known to us by their nicknames. I thought it was only a couple, but when I started making the list, there was more than I originally anticipated. For instance, in the Gospels, there are two brothers, and they're referred to as Boanerges, which translates as sons of thunder. Apparently, they were very excitable and forceful. St. James and St. John, brothers, were known as the sons of thunder. That's right in our Gospels. Then we have St. John, who's known as the beloved disciple. Not that the other disciples were not loved by Jesus, but this one just seems to have had a beautiful personal relationship with Jesus. He's the one who was very close to Jesus during the Last Supper, during some other points in his life. And he's come down to us as the beloved disciple. In fact, when Jesus is dying on the cross, he calls John over and he gives his mother. He says to his mother Mary, behold your son. And to St. John, behold your mother. He's that close to Jesus. And then we have a saint who's known sometimes by a nickname, the forerunner or the precursor. And that's our patron saint, John the Baptist. He was the forerunner, the precursor, the one who came before and announced the coming of the Savior of Jesus. Then there's one who's sometimes called just the tax collector, St. Matthew. Well, that nickname comes from his occupation. He was a tax collector when Jesus called him. And so sometimes he's referred even in writings as the tax collector. There's a book from the 1940s, early 50s, that's called Dear and Glorious Physician. The dear and glorious physician referred to is St. Luke, one of the disciples of Jesus, one of the evangelists actually, who wrote about Jesus. He was not one of the apostles, but he was one of the disciples who wrote about Jesus after Jesus' suffering, death, and resurrection. And Luke's occupation was a physician. You always remember the title of that book, though, Dear and Glorious Physician. It's a nice way to honor St. Luke. And then there's a guy who was known as Didymus. It means the twin, and his real name is Thomas. And Thomas you get as the doubter. We remember doubting Thomas. Thomas is the one who said, I will not believe that Jesus is risen unless I can touch him with my own hands. I can feel the marks of the nails in his hands and put my hand into his side. Thomas the doubter. It's said that more people believe because of the doubts of Thomas than perhaps believe because of the faith of the other apostles. Then there's a person who's come down to us as the apostle to the apostles. Interesting person, St. Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene got the beautiful privilege of seeing Jesus right after the resurrection. And she went to the apostles and told them, I have seen the Lord. And so she's nicknamed the apostle to the apostles. And I think we all know the story of Jesus dying on the cross between two thieves. And one of the thieves is known as the good thief. Not because he was so good at being a thief, but because he repented. His name, it comes down to us in tradition as Dismas, but most people just know him as the good thief, the one who turned to the Lord at his death. And Jesus said to him, Behold, you will be with me this day in paradise. Then there's the unnamed person who does a good deed for a traveler beaten by robbers on the side of the road. He's only come down to us by his nickname, the Good Samaritan. He probably had a name, and his friends, I'm sure, knew him by name, but we just know him by the nickname, and in fact, we've made the idea of doing something good for somebody else as an act of a Samaritan. It's a good Samaritan act to do that. And we have another unnamed person in the scriptures and the Gospels, the Prodigal Son. There were two brothers, and the one son goes and wastes his family money, but then comes back, realizes what he's done, and wants to be back into the fold of the family. He's known to us only by the nickname, the Prodigal Son. Of course, when we come to Mary, there are so many names for Mary that it's almost impossible to count them all. I decided to just catalog a few. We can kind of think of these as nicknames for the mother of Jesus, the mother of God. She's known as our Blessed Mother. She's known as the Blessed Virgin Mary. She's known simply as Mary. And then we get to a whole list of places where Mary has appeared over the years. And so we have ways of honoring her because of those locations. They're sort of nicknames by place. So we have Our Lady of Lourdes, after her apparition at Lourdes in France. Our Lady of Guadalupe, in the 1500s, appearing to Juan Diego in Mexico City. Our Lady of Fatima from the apparitions in Portugal. Our Lady of Knock from the apparitions in the 1800s in Knock, Ireland. Our Lady of Czestochowa, the image of Mary that was saved from a fire in Czestochowa in Poland. Our Lady of Good Hope, an apparition right within our own United States in the state of Wisconsin. Our Lady of Lavang, who is honored by the Vietnamese for an apparition in Lavang in Vietnam. Our Lady of Perpetual Help, a beautiful image, actually my favorite image of the Blessed Virgin Mary, Mother of Perpetual Help. And so we go down the line, and there are countless others for the Blessed Virgin Mary. And then we get into the saints of the church. Not only was John Chrysostom known as Golden Mouthed, but the other saints in the church have come down to us by nicknames as well. Some of these you may know, and some of these may be new to you. There's one of the saints who's known as the Dumb Ox. He was actually called that in his life, the Dumb Ox. He's St. Thomas Aquinas. Apparently he was a very slow starter as a student, but when he got going, he became one of the greatest writers of the Catholic faith in the church. The Dumb Ox really proved his nickname wrong. Then there was the person, he's not quite a saint yet, but known as the children's priest. And that's our Father Garces. They said that he was so simple and so childlike in his ways that he was the priest for the children of the area. And so I like that designation, that Francisco Garces was known for his love and his compatibility, if you will, with children. We have a saint known as the Little Flower, Saint Therese of Lasseau. over there, a little flower. She felt she was a small flower, a little flower in the garden of God. What a beautiful way of thinking. One of the saints known as the thief of souls. He was such an effective preacher, and that's Saint Vincent de Paul, known as the thief of souls. He could steal them away from the devil. The Apostle of Ireland, of course, that's Saint Patrick. Then we get to good Pope John. Angelo Roncalli, who became Pope John the 23rd, came to us as being known as good Pope John. He was always the one who had a smile on his face. He seemed to have such a wonderful outlook. And Pope John the 23rd is the Pope who called the Second Vatican Council together in the 1960s. Good Pope John, well remembered. One of the saints was remembered as Il Poverello, the poor one, the little poor one. St. Francis of Assisi, because he seemed to embody the spirit of poverty and detachment from the things of the world. The Lily of the Mohawks, the first saint among the Mohawk tribe to be canonized, Catechetical, right here in what is now our own United States of America and Canada, the Northern Hemisphere. The Lily of the Mohawks is Catechetical. The Maid of Orleans, St. Joan of Arc, a young girl who became a saint and yet was known as her fighting spirit, her soldiers, and her visions of the Lord at a time back in early France. Then there was the father of monasticism, St. Benedict, known as founding what we've come to believe as monasteries and convents, places for religious to live. The father of all that, the father of monasticism, St. Benedict. Many nicknames. I'm sure you have some particular saints that you might follow, you might have a particular devotion to. If you happen to remember any nickname for them, tell me about it when I see you over the weekend. I can always add to my knowledge of saints and the nicknames by which they're known. Speaking of seeing you this weekend is Catechetical Sunday. It's a long, hard word to pronounce, catechetical, but it reminds us of the importance of religious education, not only for children, but for people of all ages. And so, if you look in our bulletin this weekend, you'll find there's an article about signing up if you'd like to have your younger child prepared to receive First Holy Communion, or an older child in early high school to receive the sacrament of confirmation. All the sign-up information for that is in the bulletin. And for adults who might be thinking about joining our Catholic Church, either because they're baptized in another church or they're not baptized at all, the Rite of Christian Initiation for Adults, the RCIA, is also beginning. In fact, they're having an open house this Sunday. I believe it's after the 8 a.m. Mass, and all the details on that are in the parish bulletin this week, as well as how to sign up and get more information about it. There's also an interesting article. One of our parishioner families has connections over in the Philippines. And he came to us and said, I'm going to be putting together a large package of items for the poor in the Philippines, and I'd like to send it out by the end of September. And so there's an article in our bulletin with his contact information. He's looking for food and for clothing and for blankets and all sorts of items, and there's an information on our bulletin how to get it to him, or even a phone number so he can come and pick it up from you. We're not collecting these items at the church, but we're just spreading the information so that if you wanted to add to this packet being sent over to the Philippines at the end of September, you can do that. As always, check the parish bulletin. When things come up that we find out we want to share with you, we're very likely to put them into the bulletin so they're available to everybody. Well, it's time for Pascal to join us. He comes down with the message, and since we spoke of names and nicknames, probably appropriate. Vocavi te nomine. I have called you by name. God calls each one of us to do His will, to do what needs to be done in the place and at the time that we're living in it. Vocavi te nomine. I have called you by name. God bless and have a wonderful week.